Welcome back to another episode of Keeping It a Bean with Quise. You already know what it is. What it is. What's up? No, I'm just kidding. But welcome back to the show. Like I keep saying, Keeping It a Bean with Quise is an opportunity for me to chat with y'all over a cup of coffee because that's where some of the best conversations happen. This could be things that are just on my mind, things I'm thinking around, pop culture, news, music, art, fashion, whatever I feel like talking about, but I get to talk about it here. Again, this platform is very different from This American Negro. This American Negro is a very particular show, and I just want to keep that as mostly an audio experience. But this right here, I'm going to have some fun with it. And today, I'm going to get into my criticism bag. Because I don't think niggas know how to give critique anymore. I'm going to be honest. And I'm only saying this because I'm realizing the way that we're consuming art, the way that we consume content, the way that we consume fashion and moments and all of that, we don't sink our teeth into anything anymore. There's no critical engagement with stuff anymore. And so I'll give you a little bit of my background and how I approach criticism and art criticism mostly, right? And then we can talk about some other things, whatever. But for right now, criticism of art only exists in one way. And it bothers me that it only is a very limited scope of how we look at music criticism and artistic criticism, because it doesn't allow us to look at so many different vantage points, right? So when I think about criticism, it is this idea of how am I receiving this? What was the artist's intent of doing this? But also, what can we peel out from here? Excuse me. From multiple standpoints, okay? What comes out of here from multiple standpoints? And this means that I can go in a particular angle. I might love this album, but I'm going in from a critical race lens. Then another day I might go in from a feminist lens. Then maybe I might look at it from a class standpoint. Then maybe I might look at it from whatever standpoint I choose to then go and approach this thing. But I say that the art of criticism is becoming a lot more lost. And it is a moment of living in a hypercritical world because of social media existing. But I think the other aspect of it too is people only want to enjoy what they want to enjoy. And I'm not mad at it. That's regular. We're human. But when you don't enjoy something, the inability to find value in any of it bothers me. And I'm not saying the stuff where you're just oh, this is hit after hit after hit. That's great. I'm talking about something that took time and took work, and then you wanted to put together a very particular message. So my background is in theater, and I was particularly the dramaturg. So this is the person who studies the art of theater, studies the history of theater, so we can answer questions for the director, the actors, to give them more context around why this stuff matters. And so for me, my theatrical background, and more specifically my dramaturgy background, allows me to transfer that to so many other avenues of my life. And so dramaturgy makes me have to think around why is this set important? What are we communicating with this set? Why are costumes important? What are we communicating with that? How does the light then elevate this theme that we're trying to go through? How does the character's approach matter in terms of how we're delivering lines, their relationships to each other? What is the social, political, and historical context of what is going on at this time? And how can we bring all of that together with the most amount of intent as possible? And so for me, I love that kind of approach because it means I can't just take art at face level. I don't just take literature at one base level. Everything matters to me. And some people be the sky's just blue. For me, no, it's not. So why did the artist choose this light? Why did they sing their lyric the way that they did? Why are they moving maybe with their head moved up a little bit versus down a little bit? And how they talk around each other, right? All of that stuff matters when you're communicating as an artist, no matter what your medium is. And so I think criticism has become so one note. People look at a piece of art and they're just well, we can only look at this from a political lens because what are the political implications of this? And I guess I'm more so looking at Black art in particular because we do have this conversation around all right, well, what kind of social political commentary is being made here? What is the political commentary? Where are the implications? Does this feel limiting? What does this mean? X, Y, and Z. And for me, I'm there are so many different minds that existed in history that allow us to be able to approach something with our own personal lens, but also be able to appreciate how somebody else may have interpreted it or what their positionality allows them to understand or misunderstand, right? And I ain't gonna act like I'm perfect because I be judging people all the time and I think I'm a know-it-all. So I tell everybody I'm a recovering know-it-all. However, when it does come to criticism, it's so important that we're not just looking at it in a one note. Like, I remember, and it's funny, I use the gift as the example for Beyonce. And I remember just being bothered by it because I'm looking at it and I'm just like, yo, she is telling an emotionally intelligent story for the black boy. And like, what does it mean to love on your blackness, right? And so I'm just like, yo, this story was cohesive. It was important. It was necessary of the time. It was ahead of its time. And I believe that it's something that allows us to center ourselves, blackness throughout the diaspora in a way that feels meaningful, in a way that feels like it's so diverse of everybody else. So I don't need to subvert anything. I don't need to do any of this. I can just know that Beyonce sees me in my fullness and she gives me grace to be in my fullness, right? But when I go to Twitter and everybody knows 2020 was a hard time. When you go back and you're just like, okay, well, they're talking around the implications of what does it mean to use Africa as a backdrop? What does it mean to only use Western artists? What does it mean? What are the political implications of a Black American centering themselves in Afro beats, right? What does it mean to center ourselves in that space? All extremely valid criticisms, but I do think in those moments of those criticisms, it was actually difficult for people to remember that this was an allegory to the Lion King. And this was some of the best work I've seen, right? And more particularly around the lyrical content and the messaging behind it. The messaging behind it was very much so about the emotional intelligence and learning yourself and being one with your blackness and affirming yourself and knowing that you are destined for greatness and you're allowed to have your humanity in this world. But if the rest of the world and the rest of our criticism is only staked in the political commentary, I don't know if that's good enough service to see here are the limitations of what this project had in terms of like a social and political lens, but can we also talk about the humanity that existed in this art as well? What does it actually look like for us to engage with it in so many different facets? And I don't know if I don't know if we've lost it, more so as like we're all committed to like one answer to be true and to be right. Damn, I sound like what's his face. Doesn't matter. But I know even sometimes I struggle with that because I'm just like, well, look, we can talk about it from this angle, but I do think that there's value in what she was also bringing in this angle. And so what are those implications look like? What does that conversation look like? How do we be a little bit more honest around it? And so for me, I love talking around criticism, but I do think that oftentimes a lot of people get it one note. And so if we're not able to expand on this idea of what we can do around it, then I don't know if we're necessarily going to be able to push forward as a world. Because I do believe that critique allows people to push. Critique allows people to learn. Critique allows people to grow in perspective and be able to grow in their own art. I don't think that anybody's above critique. I do, though, believe that critique must be delivered in a way that is meant with love, but I don't know if people are approaching critique that way. Which is why people call them stink pieces now. Because art and media must exist in one in order for us as a culture to document the art that was happening, to experience the art was happening in real time, but also understand the implications of like this could be better or this is what could have been. But that also leaves room for the artists themselves to grow and evolve and to iterate, right? We're not just one-trick ponies. So what does it mean for us to start giving space for criticism that doesn't only exist in a political commentary, but criticism that can exist from a feminist lens or a humane lens or an emotional lens, or does it lean into logic? Does it lean into all of it? Because taking the time to put together a very good project and listening to the content and listening to what the fuller message is outside of just like immediate reactions matters. And so for me, that's why I love like a podcast like Don't Alert the Stands, which is why I love A Rap Caviar, which is why like I love writers like Injera and I love writers like Evie Ani, because these are people who are going above and beyond. They can still give criticism, they can still give praise, they can still give um, stuff that people got wrong and where they should have pivoted, or maybe what they got right. But I think they all take it from specific lenses that allow history, that allow relevance, that allow the art, that allow the cultural commentary, the criticism that can all exist in one. They do that so well. And so for me, when I'm looking at how Jinx is approaching this, he's so analytical and he's so logical, but he has a breadth of history and experience in those moments and what that meant to the culture. So the cultural criticism and the cultural impact is necessary. Where somebody on Don't Alert the Stands like Chape has the cultural and historical implications of what this means and what groundwork was there or what sample was used here. Where somebody like Nick is able to just be like, no, this person's on the come up because there's something in this sound that's working. Eden is like, yo, I can appreciate this as somebody who's a consumer and a fan of music, right? Doesn't have to be a music journalist, doesn't have to be a critic, but is somebody who's a fan of music. And all of these things can exist because it allows everybody to think around like, oh, okay, here's how I can round out my thoughts around a project, around a piece of music, around a piece of art. What is an artist trying to communicate with a series of work? What is a mini-series trying to communicate along that entire style, right? What is a series of books trying to communicate in a fullness of its story? And so if we're not being a little bit more critically engaged with the music that we're listening to or the art that we're digesting and knowing how to approach it, not only with how I receive it, but also with the artist's original intent, I don't know if we're moving forward. And I don't know if criticism exists in a way that's still respected because everybody believes that they're a critic. And we're all allowed to be critics, but there are those of us that know how to do it well. And those of us who take time and can appreciate it. And so I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it, but I do recognize like when we are engaging with this, how do I filter out who I'm like truly listening with and engaging with versus just simply taking the information in and calling it a day, right? So my question to you is, how do you approach criticism? What are your thoughts around the topics I covered today? What do you think about in terms of your favorite piece of art? Look at that favorite piece of art and let me know. Is it the lighting that you love? Is it the dialogue that you love? Is it the character development? Is it the outfits? What's being communicated? Books, music, film, TV, art, anything. Please let me know what you're looking forward to. Let me know what you think I should be watching, reading, looking at, trying, any of that stuff. To me, that's all dope, and it's a great way to start building community. So once again, thank you for listening to another episode of Keepin It a Bean with Marquise. Here, I do believe that the best conversations happen over a cup of coffee. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget that you can like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Make sure to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. I'm going to try and be here as consistently as possible. I thank y'all so much, and I appreciate y'all getting on this journey with me of growing this YouTube channel. I'm working on getting up to 1,000 followers, so let me know if you can get more people. We're getting there. I know I want to celebrate and be excited because this is something I think is worth having and going further into. So I appreciate you. Make sure you grab your cup of coffee. If you know a coffee sponsor, send them my way, particularly if they're Black coffee owners. Please send them my way. I'll make sure to give them a proper shout out. That's one of my big goals of the year is manifesting at least 2 coffee collaborations with Keepin It Bean with Quise. So I'll see you soon. Peace.